shaped thing. Okay, so well, it just doesn't look very ovarian-like there. Let's go look at this one. Okay, so there it is. See that bean-looking thing there? That is the ovary. And then what we need to do to figure out where the fimbria is follow this tube up and find out where that tube attaches to the ovary. So I would say this stuff right here. You gotta just something to point with. Those would be fine. Okay. Ovary here. We're going to call this tissue here fimbria. Everybody see that? Okay. Now, since we know this is the fallopian tube, we know it's not the ovarian ligament. And the ovarian ligament is kind of hiding. Okay? I'd say that this is it here. But what we need to know for the models is the models will have this guy coming here, the fallopian tube. They'll have one right alongside of it. That's the ovarian ligament going right to the ovary. So make sure on the models you can tell the difference. Okay? What we can see here is we can see that this tissue, see how broad this tissue is here? This is the broad ligament. And that thing, if we hadn't screwed it up, that thing would come all the way down to here. It would be the inside of this tube.
Okay, so how would you be able to separate the broad ligament from the ovarian ligament?
Well, in a human, the ovarian ligament is pretty evident. It's a big cord inside that broad ligament, running inside, but you can see it. It's like a tube like this. But what we can see, if we can imagine that that broad ligament hasn't got this gaping hole in it, because it would be right here, where the broad ligament goes over the ovary here, and you can see this is broad ligament and it's going over that ovary, that's the mesovarium. Okay, where the broad ligament goes over the ovary, mesovarium. Where the broad ligament goes over the fallopian tube itself, and if we hadn't torn it all up, you can see there's part of it there. It does go over the fallopian tube, and that's where it becomes the mesosalpinx. Okay, two kind of tough terms that you need to know about. Mesovarium, where the broad ligament goes over the ovary, and mesosalpinx, where the broad ligament goes over the fallopian tube. Okay, so ovary, which spits out what? Eggs or ovum. We're gonna call this right here in the logical spot, even though it may not be exactly right. We're gonna call it fimbria. Okay, fimbria is the opening to the fallopian tube, and on the human, the tube would be about that big because then the uterus would be here, right? So a third of that tube would be inside the uterus. The middle third is the isthmus of the fallopian tube. So we still have a middle third whether it's in a uterus or not. So first third is not isthmus. Middle third is the isthmus, right? And that's about all there is to the female reproductive system on this cat. Now we can see some pretty neat stuff on this cat since it's so big. What vessel is it that I've got right here? Renal vein. So that means this is what? Nope. What are we talking about here today, guys? Reproductive, which would make this vein the ovarian vein. And we know that because the gonadal vein comes from down here and dumps into what vein to return back to the system?
The renal vein.
The renal vein. And that's the renal vein, and that's the only thing dumping into it, right? But this is the ovarian vein right here. All right? And we can find the descending aorta. And that's it. This is it right here, descending aorta. And just below the renal vein here, we're going to have some little ones coming off of it. And they are the renal arteries. I mean the ovarian arteries. So the best way to do it is to find an ovary and see if we can find a vein going, I mean a blood vessel going to it. There we go. Okay. So you can see that one right there, going right to it. So that is the ovarian artery there. Ovarian artery coming off the aorta, ovarian vein going back and dumping into the renal vein. Okay, really important that you know that distinction because that little trip thing of the of it going back in the renal vein is just a ripe question for the test, okay? All right, so we got that. We're not doing any intestinal stuff. We've got the bladder, obviously, where it is. Here it is. And you see on the bladder on the female, nothing really on the bladder. Whereas we're going to have some bubble gum looking stuff called the seminal vesicle on the male, and we're also going to have the vas deferens going in behind it, okay? All right, so now you guys go over what I just want